Okay, here's something Boston doesn't put on the postcards. About a sixth of the city never even land. Just look at the old maps. And that made-up land's already going under. The harbour keeps creeping up, the Freedom Trail's taking water, and the city can't cover it all. Most people in Boston have no idea. A whole sixth of their city isn't real ground, just dirt, dumped in the harbour for 2 centuries. And here's the part that gets me. All that filled-in harbour, that's where Boston put its priciest real estate. The money's sitting on water. Now look at what the city's up against. 47 miles of coast to protect, 111 million to spend, $500 billion on the line. You know those gorgeous Back Bay brownstones? They stand on wooden posts. That wood only holds up underwater. Table drops, the block sinks. Back in 2012, Hurricane Sandy wrecked New York City. Boston got lucky. The storm missed high tide by hours. That was the whole save. And then the city did this baffling thing. It built a new neighborhood on landfill at sea level. Scientists said don't. They did anyway. Think about that. Boston's probably got more climate scientists than any city on Earth. They wrote the warnings themselves. The city kept building. But the Seaport District's not the only Boston near the water. Across the harbour, you've got East Boston. Working folks, low ground, way less money. Boston Harbour's come up 8 inches in a century. Doesn't sound like much, right? But with a 10-foot tide swing, 8 inches changes everything. And here's what really traps the city. Most of that coastline is privately owned. A seawall works in one piece. One gap, it all floods. Then comes the winter of 2028. A nor'easter hits at high tide. The thing Hurricane Sandy spared them. The Seaport District floods. Faneuil Hall takes water, and the water goes straight for the tunnels. Boston built America's first subway back in 1897. Nobody designed it for a rising harbour. Just sit with this. Faneuil Hall, the actual cradle of liberty, now has a waterline. Rangers measure how high the harbour climbs that brick. And the insurance companies? They run the numbers fast. By 2030, coastal premiums triple. Non-renewal letters hit the seaport. The money's pricing the flood. Remember those wooden posts under Back Bay? Now the groundwater shifts. The wood rots. The brownstones crack. Fixing one building runs close to $2 million. Meet Maya Okonkwo. She designs Boston's flood defenses. Decides what gets saved first. Her own East Boston neighborhood, sitting there under one word, unfunded. So Boston dreams up one giant harbor barrier. The study kills it. $12 billion, too slow. Now the city fights for every block separately. And get this, by 2033, the Seaport District's jacking up its own streets, rebuilding higher a decade after opening, living up to that nickname. 2034, and East Boston floods. Basement apartments just gone, families out. Meanwhile, downtown stays dry behind funded walls. Same water, 2 different cities. Here's the bill nobody wants to read. Defending Boston through 2050, $24 billion. Actually funded? Barely 2. In that gap, history gets surrendered. Even the warships aren't safe. By 2035, Charlestown's lifting its colonial Main Street, and the USS Constitution needs flood barriers against the tide. And something flips around 2035. For the first time, Boston's high ground costs more than a harbor view. Turns out, elevation's the new luxury. By 2038, the North End floods from 2 directions at once. Streets 400 years old, funneling the harbor past Paul Revere's door. By 2039, the preservation folks face a brutal list. Which landmarks to lift, which to move, which to just film before they're gone. And the Rizzo family closes the bakery in 2040. No single storm took them. 100 small floods wore them down. A century done. Then the gateway starts to go. 2041, Logan International Airport on filled harbour land floods at the runway. Saving it runs close to $5 billion. Maya helped wall off downtown. East Boston never made the budget. Her family's on the upper floors now. Her street built its own barrier. Here's the grim new tourism. By 2042, the Freedom Trail detours around flood walls, and tour boats sell the drowning waterfront as the attraction. And here's what saving Back Bay costs. From 2043, the city pumps water underground forever, keeping those posts wet. $40 million a year. By 2043, Boston starts managed retreat. Some flooded blocks just get cleared, handed to the marsh, a green buffer where a neighborhood stood. Here is the threat the city missed. The Charles River Dam holds the harbor back. Now the sea shoves it from behind. Never built for that. 17 years in, 16 big floods, 6 historic sites gone. Boston's burning $2 billion a year holding the line, and the line keeps sliding. By 2043, the whole world's watching Boston. The place American democracy was born is now the global lesson on what a rising ocean takes. 2044, and the Seaport District's raced streets get overtopped anyway. The towers keep going, the ground floors are done. The newest district handed over. Then comes the night the city always feared. 2045, the great nor'easter hits dead on at high tide. Downtown floods, Faneuil Hall stands in water, and the next morning, Boston counts it up. Historic buildings wrecked, artifacts pulled from the mud, a piece of the founding city gone for good. 20 years of water, $38 billion in public money, $190 billion in private losses, 11 historic landmarks gone and not coming back. But East Boston refuses to disappear. The neighborhood the budget forgot raises its own houses, builds its own walls. The banner says, "East Boston stays." Watch the whole economy turn over. By 2046, fighting the harbor is the industry. 90,000 jobs in flood walls and marsh work. This is Eleanor Hart. She saves Boston's history by scanning it. If the sea takes a landmark, she makes sure a perfect digital copy survives. Then the river turns on the city. 2047, the Charles River Dam gets overtopped, and the harbor floods Back Bay from behind, past every wall. By 2047, Boston's climbing back uphill. People moving onto the original hills from 1630, the real ground, the land it never faked. Picture this by 2048. Parts of the Freedom Trail you do by boat now. Tourists drifting past colonial windows, the red line glowing underwater. And the emergency just never ends. By 2048, watching the harbor is permanent. A standing agency, eyes on the tide every single minute. By 2049, the Boston harbor sits 19 inches above where we started. The barriers hold, for now. But the sea is nowhere near done. So here's where Boston lands. Smaller on the filled-in flats, packed tighter on the old hills, redrawn by the harbor it carved itself out of. Boston, 2050. 63,000 fewer people. 13 landmarks lost, 19 saved. 52 billion spent. The city that started a country, holding what it could. Now Boston couldn't keep all of it, but it lifted Faneuil Hall up, walled off the USS Constitution. Some of that cradle it refused to lose, and plenty Boston couldn't hold. 13 historic sites gone. Colonial buildings standing in permanent water. Now they live on a memorial wall, nowhere else. The new Boston waterfront isn't a wall, it's marsh, that same wetland the city filled in 2 centuries back, doing what no barrier could. 2050, Boston's on its original hills again, the high ground from 1630. 400 years later, the city's back on solid land. And now the world takes notes. By 2050, Boston's playbook is everywhere. Save what you can, scan what you can't, hand back the rest. The harbor that carried the revolution, wider now, took the made land back. Boston spent 4 centuries shoving the water away. It just waited. And 2050 isn't the end. By 2070, the harbor climbs another foot. By 2100, several more. All Boston bought itself was time. By 2048, watching that harbor is just permanent. A standing agency, eyes on the tide every single minute, and no end date, ever. By 2049, The Boston Harbor's 19 inches over where we started. The barriers are holding, for now. But the sea? Nowhere close to done. The young Bostonians of 2050 never saw the old shoreline. They build marsh, not walls, got handed the water, and live with it. Boston lost neighborhoods, lost landmarks, lost ground. But Faneuil Hall's still standing. Old North Church, too. Some of that cradle made it through. Eleanor finished her archive. Every lost Boston landmark saved as a perfect digital twin. The city lost the buildings, never the memory. Boston was always built on borrowed ground. 400 years, the city figured the harbor forgot. It didn't, and the loan finally got called in. Boston, 2050. 612,000 people, up on the hills where it all started. The harbor keeps rising. The cradle stands. Story keeps going.